Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to our daily quiz. Before we begin today's discussion, we have a big announcement. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS is glad to present All India Mega Mock Test for Prelims 2023. This Prelims test series is all set to begin from 6th November, and this program shall be available both in English and as well as in Hindi. Aspirants who are preparing for next year's prelims can take up the prelims test series both in online format or in offline format. This comprehensive test series will continue till your prelims exam and will include sectional tests and as well as full-length tests. Following each practice test, you will also receive a detailed report card with your All India ranking. And the best part is that the first two mock tests, which will be held on the 6th November and 13th November, both would be free of cost for all the students. So if you're looking to scale up your prelims preparation, do subscribe to the test series, and the details for the same has been provided in the description box below. And also with regard to the first mock test, which is being held on the 6th of November, we urge students based out of Delhi to take up the test at the offline center itself. Because after the test, our faculties will be discussing the paper and also solving your doubts. All the details related to the program has been provided in the description box below, so do take a look and register yourself for the upcoming free prelims test series. So with this, let's get started with the discussion of today's daily quiz. The first question, which of the following statements are correct? Brazil is the largest country in South America. It is bound by land on 3 sides and opens to the Pacific Ocean towards the east. It is the only country in the world that has the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn running through it. Before answering this question, first let's understand why Brazil is in news. See, according to this article in The Hindu, Lula da Silva has won the presidential elections in Brazil by defeating the incumbent president Jair Bolsonaro. Following Lula da Silva's victory in the elections, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated him, as this development holds significance for India-Brazil relations as well. See, the term of Jair Bolsonaro has been very controversial in Brazil, not just as a result of his extremist views, but also because of the decline of Brazil's economy under Jair Bolsonaro, coupled with the poor handling of the pandemic, which led to a very high death count in Brazil, along with the destruction of the Amazonian forest, as a direct result of the economic policies of Jair Bolsonaro. So following this controversial term of Jair Bolsonaro, Lula da Silva has won a historic mandate and returns as the president of Brazil for the 3rd term. He has already been the president of Brazil for 2 terms between 2003-2006 and 2007-2011. During this period, Lula da Silva was known for his progressive policies, especially focused on social welfare. And his government was credited for lifting millions of people out of poverty through popular schemes such as Bolsa Familia, through which Brazil was giving out conditional cash transfers to the poor people in order to lift them out of poverty. This economic model was even studied by India, as India was also looking to implement similar models. And during his term as the president of Brazil, India did share very close relations with Lula da Silva. He had visited India quite a few times and was even the chief guest at the Republic Day parade celebrations in 2004. He paid a visit again in 2007 and 2008 when he was hosted by then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. India shared very close relations with Brazil under Lula da Silva, not just in the social and economic domain, but also in the strategic domain. Through various groupings such as IBSA, India and Brazil were working very closely with South Africa and providing leadership for South-South countries. That is, by sharing expertise with each other with regard to socio-economic welfare programs, they were assisting other developing underdeveloped nations as well. And even at platforms like BRIC, that is before South Africa joined the BRICS grouping, India and Brazil played a critical role in the establishment of this organization. So considering these close relations India had built with Brazil under Lula da Silva, Prime Minister Modi would be looking forward to work with the new Brazilian president. Now coming back to the map-based question on Brazil as a result of this development, we can say that option C is the correct answer. Brazil is indeed the largest country in South America. It is the only country in the world that has the equator and the Tropic of Capricorn running through it. So statements 1 and 3 are correct. However, statement 2 is incorrect because Brazil opens towards the Atlantic Ocean and not the Pacific. Now let's take a look at the second question. Which of the following statements are correct? RBI has launched a central bank-backed digital rupee for the wholesale segment. In the Union Budget of 2022, it had been announced that RBI would be rolling out its digital currency soon. Now this topic is in news because the Reserve Bank of India is launching a central bank-backed digital rupee exclusively for the wholesale segment today. This important development has been covered by Indian Express and also by The Hindu. Given the popular rise of cryptocurrencies and the controversy surrounding them, RBI had announced that it is going to come out with its own digital currency, which would be backed by the government. This was announced by the government in the Union Budget of 2022, and accordingly, the RBI has operationalized a central bank digital currency for the wholesale segment, which would be symbolized as e-rupee for the wholesale segment. This is being launched as a pilot project, and very soon, a digital currency would also be launched for the retail segment, thus providing India with a digital rupee. Such a digital currency, which is backed by the central bank, is essentially a digital form of currency and will enable contactless transactions, thus moving the economy towards a cashless economy. And the RBI is planning to introduce two types of central bank digital currency, one for the retail segment and for the wholesale segment. The retail digital rupee would be made available to all, whereas the wholesale digital rupee would be restricted for financial institutions. Such a digital currency, which is backed by the central bank and the government, is different from your regular cryptocurrencies, because this digital currency would be considered as legal tender, and hence it will have its own intrinsic value, unlike cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or Ethereum and the others. So this digital rupee, which is being rolled out, would be the equivalent of the Indian currency in digital form with government backing. The advantages of introducing a digital rupee is that it will reduce the transaction costs involved in financial transactions, and it will also help the government and the RBI to monitor all the transactions, thus ensuring the security and stability of the economy. The other advantage is that a digital currency is a lifelong currency because unlike paper notes, it cannot be tampered with or it does not undergo any damage, thus saving a lot of cost for the RBI. So with this understanding, we can say that both the given statements are correct, and hence option C is the right answer. Now let's take a look at the third question. The term Tiangong, seen frequently in news, refers to an asteroid sample return mission of Japanese Space Agency JAXA or China's space station being constructed in low Earth orbit, an aircraft carrier developed by China which was docked in Sri Lanka recently, an island in East China Sea that is disputed between China and Japan. Let me first give you the correct answer for this question. The right answer would be option B. Tiangong refers to the International Space Station being built by China in low Earth orbit. This topic is in news because according to this article in The Hindu, yesterday China has successfully completed the launch of its third and final module to complete the Tiangong space station. Similar to the International Space Station, which is essentially a US-led project, China is building its own space station, which is coming up in the low Earth orbit. And from last year, China has already launched and assembled the first two modules of the space station. This includes the Tianhe module and the Wenqian module. So yesterday, China has successfully launched the third module, the Mengtian. And next year, China would also be launching a telescope called the Zunxian, which would orbit around the Tiangong and would also dock with the space station, thus providing China the capabilities to carry out advanced space exploration and space-based experiments. This infographic over here also gives you an insight regarding China's future space exploration plans, which includes not just assembling the space station, but also a mission to collect near-Earth asteroid samples, along with a mission to Mars to collect samples and return it back to Earth, and an unmanned probe to Jupiter, and even a manned space flight to land astronauts on the moon. Along with this, China also has grand ambitions to develop reusable rockets to bring down the cost of subsequent missions, and it is also building a nuclear powered space shuttle for powering China's deep space missions. Now let's take a look at the fourth question. Who amongst the below given freedom fighters were charged by the British under Section 124A of the Indian Penal Code? To answer this question, first you should know what is Section 124A of the IPC. See, Section 124A of the IPC is also popularly referred to as the Sedition Law. This British era provision under the IPC deals with any seditious activities against the government. The provision says, whoever by words either spoken or written, or by signs or by visible representation or otherwise, brings or attempts to bring into hatred or contempt, or excites or attempts to excite disaffection towards the government established by law, they shall be punished with imprisonment for life along with a fine. Essentially, the provision treats any activity against the government which incites hatred and disaffection as seditious activity and provides for very stringent punishment. This provision was introduced by the British primarily to target India's freedom struggle and India's freedom fighters. Several freedom fighters were charged and arrested under this controversial law. This provision has been inherited by India post-independence, and ever since the law has been very controversial. Because quite often the provision has been misused by the government as well to target critics and political opponents, and as a result the provision has been criticized by the Supreme Court along with various commissions and as well as by critics. For example, in 1950, in the Ramesh Thapar case, the Supreme Court took a stand against the provision of sedition by pointing out that criticism of the government exciting disaffection or bad feelings towards it is not to be regarded as a justifying ground for restricting the freedom of expression of the press, which is guaranteed under Article 19 of the Constitution, unless it is directly undermining the security of the state or leading to the overthrow of the state. Later, the High Court of Punjab and Haryana and the High Court of Allahabad also took a similar stand against the sedition law and declared that IPC was primarily a tool for colonial masters to quell discontent in the country and to target India's freedom struggle, and the High Courts had declared this provision to be unconstitutional. But later in 1962, in the Kedarnath Singh case, a 5-judge constitution bench upheld the constitutional validity of this provision while placing restrictions on its application. In order to prevent the misuse of the law, the court held that unless accompanied by an incitement or call for violence which could lead to public disorder, just criticism against the government cannot be treated as sedition. This was reiterated by the Supreme Court in the Balwant Singh case of 1995 as well, where the court had pointed out that before filing cases under Section 124A and arresting people, the real intent of the speech must be taken into account before labeling it as seditious activity. Several reports of Law Commission of India and even many other judgments of the Supreme Court have expressed similar concern about the rampant misuse of the law on sedition. So in this context, the Supreme Court was looking at a case challenging the validity of Section 124A, and yesterday the Supreme Court has told the central government to not file new cases under sedition law, that is under Section 124A of the IPC. So essentially the Supreme Court has placed a freeze on this provision for the time being until it completes a thorough review of the provision. Now coming back to the question, the right answer is option D. All the freedom fighters mentioned here were charged and arrested under the controversial Section 124A of the IPC. Now let's take up a practice question from a previous year's prelims paper. Which one of the following foreign travelers elaborately discussed about diamonds and diamond mines of India? Francois Bernier, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, Jean de Thévenot, Abbé Barthélemy. The correct answer is option B. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier was a 17th century French gem merchant and trader who carried out many expeditions and voyages to India. During his travel, he carefully documented the diamond trade and diamond mines of India, and he is best known for his discovery or purchase of the popular Tavernier blue diamond, which was likely sourced from the Kollur mine in the Guntur district of Andhra Pradesh. Now, coming to the fact of the day, let's talk about voting rights of undertrials and convicts. Because the Supreme Court is currently examining the validity of the law that deprives undertrials and convicts from exercising their constitutional right to vote. See, under the Indian Constitution, right to vote has been recognized under Article 326. But under the Representation of People Act, through Section 62, Clause 5, there is a prohibition on those people who have been confined in a prison, whether under a sentence of imprisonment or transportation or otherwise, or even if a person is under the lawful custody of the police. In these instances, the person is prohibited from casting their right to vote. Essentially, individuals who are under the lawful custody of the police and those who are serving a sentence of imprisonment following their conviction, they do not have the right to vote. Even under trial prisoners who are yet to be convicted are excluded from participating in elections, even though their names are listed on the electoral rolls. Only those who are under preventive detention can cast their vote through postal ballots. This provision of Representation of People Act has been criticized as unconstitutional as it deprives a large section of the Indian society from exercising their right to vote. This ban on voting rights of undertrials and convicts makes no offense-based or sentence-based classification. That is, prisoners, irrespective of the crime they have been accused of, or irrespective of the term or the sentence they are serving, they're all deprived from their right to vote. And more importantly, it does not make a distinction between convicted prisoners and undertrials. The basic principle of natural justice is that undertrials are believed to be innocent or they are presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. So until the guilt of the accused is proven in a court of law, they cannot be deprived of their rights. But in this case, even undertrials have been deprived of their right to vote. The provision is seen as very arbitrary as it uses a broad language. It ends up disenfranchising a large segment of the electorate. Because according to the latest report of the National Crime Records Bureau, more than 500,000 people are in jail. Majority of them are still under trials, and many of them have been convicted. But the under trial population in our jails is extremely high, and even without being convicted of the offense they have been charged with, they are deprived of their right to vote. It's on these grounds that a petition has challenged the provision of Representation of the People Act, and the Supreme Court is examining the validity of this provision. So on this note, let's end our discussion for today. If you like the initiative, do support us by liking the video, share your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.